So this is the Straight to the Point podcast, and I am joined in studio today by the representative from the 12th Legislative District, representing Butler County, Stephenie Scialabba. Thanks for joining me, Stephenie.
Happy to be here on apparently Taylor Swift's birthday, which is
Taylor Swift's birthday.
Important matters before the House of Representatives today.
As we break for 3 months because of a devastating leaky roof in the House floor, the House chamber, we're at a budget impasse. We still don't have critical code bills to finalize the budget. 5 months, almost 6 months after the fact. Yet, we're considering before the House today a resolution from House Democrats that would consider this era, 2023, the Swift era, the Taylor Swift era. What say you on that, Stephenie?
We are 8 weeks out from the 2024 budget proposal by the governor, and we don't have the 2023 budget finalized. That's what I have to say about this. We are focusing on making jokes in state government committee. And we have community colleges, one in my district, that is now going to have to take out loans with $25,000 a month in interest. Mm-hmm. We have public libraries that are going without funds. We have people who are seriously hurting. And we can see the palpable, tangible impact of the failure of this body across the Commonwealth.
And it's been called by some, and it's a legitimate claim, that this has been the least productive legislative session in some time. Now, for us, we're freshmen. I represent York County. You're in Butler. We don't have a frame of reference. But how frustrating has it been for you, coming from the private sector? You were a lawyer. I was in communications. We're tasked in the real world with getting things done. Mm-hmm. We don't have much to show for ourselves. How is that on a day-to-day basis?
I've had to start looking outside of doing legislation to accomplish things because I recognize full well that there is a high likelihood that Republican bills, at least with any substance to them, are not going to be caught up. If they are, our names have been stripped off of some of them, and they're just completely either gutted and replaced, and they are beyond recognition by the time they come back out of committee, or they're just not going to go anywhere. And so, part of me, I was a political science major, before I went to law school, and part of me is like, this is exactly how government is supposed to function, in the sense of we have a very narrow split of, between right and left in this Commonwealth. And we see that in the House of Representatives, right, with the one vote margin. Mm-hmm. Then we see it between the split of chambers, the Republican Senate and the Democrat House. Part of me thinks, I'm glad nothing too, controversial is happening, because no one seems to be able to reach a compromise. So I don't want something out there that's completely partisan. Mm-hmm. So part of me thinks, well, this is what we get, and this is supposed to be this way. The other practical part of me says, I can't stand how this is just an absolute failure again, because where the rubber meets the road is when we're seeing things like community colleges that already don't have major private donors, and we've got the state affiliated, or the state institutions have their funding. The Pitts, the Penn States of the world with their billion-dollar endowments have their funding, and we've got community colleges that are already struggling to begin with, unable to continue. And so that's the part where, philosophically, this is the way government's supposed to work. But in reality, when you take that conceptual piece out of it, look what we're doing to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel you on both points, particularly the former. Like, I'm a limited government guy. I know you appreciate limited government, mm-hmm. getting out of the way of our businesses and our families, lowering taxes, limiting regulations. So it's nice to actually, as crazy as this sounds, go slow, because we don't want any momentous things occurring that don't represent the whole of Pennsylvania. But on the other side of the token, like you said, it is wholly partisan in this building, and in areas where you think are sensible bipartisan solutions. You and I have proposed several of them. Yeah. There just doesn't seem to be any willingness to work together.
I have a bill that I introduced a long time ago, non-controversial at all, and it simply is a technical change on certified versus registered mail. That's it. Because it's a headache and it's not proper. The current language of the law requires you to mail something in a fashion that is reserved, for paper documents, that's reserved for physical mailings, right? Like a physical, type of item that you're going to mail. And it doesn't make sense. And it's a headache for the post office. It's a headache for the people trying to mail something. That's it. That's all it does. Mm-hmm. It's not partisan in any way, shape, or form. Do you think it's gone anywhere?
I don't.
Nope.
And I have several examples from myself that applies to that same precedent.
And you know, the other shame is too is this is maybe again part and parcel of being in this position, but it's not. It's when you do get something done, there is nothing that's free. It doesn't just happen. If you're getting a Republican bill moved, there's been a trade-off somewhere, and oftentimes that's a significant trade-off.
Yep. So one of the beauties of this legislature is we have people from diverse backgrounds. I know that. So I come from the communications public relations field. In certain areas, that gives me, elevated wisdom, and in my little lane of communications, I think I excel. One of those other areas, those backgrounds that really pays in this job is the legal profession. And I know we've talked about this. You have a series of bills that we'll talk about here in a second. But you're able, Stephenie, to really have those eyes, because a bill is interpreted, by a judge. It's executed by the executive branch. We make the laws, executed by the executive branch. So you have eyesight for these words, these phrases, and I've often seen you mark up these bills, and you're seeing problems with the bills that I wouldn't. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you read them, because as we know, not everybody reads them, so I appreciate that you noticed that I do too. And I'll tell you, what I've seen is, it was my job for a long time to see all of the ambiguities and to recognize them. Sometimes use them to the benefit of my clients, sometimes use them, against somebody else. And after a while, my mother, she was an attorney too, she passed away, but, she used to say, it just becomes you, it just becomes who you are. And so I see this, and I can see what comes through, and I immediately know, all right, well, this could go X, Y, and Z, and you're going to have unintended consequences of A, B, C, and I know you're really after D, E, F, but we're nowhere near here, right? And you never want to let perfection be the enemy of progress, because no one's going to agree exactly on what perfection is, much less get 203 people or a majority of them to agree on that. So it's a balancing act, but there are things then that I immediately know, all right, this is way, way, way too far gone, and we have to stop it in its tracks. So things that are unconstitutional, things that are a major affront to existing rights, things that are going to be misused, abused, misinterpreted, and sometimes deliberately so. That has been a tremendous help for me, and something that I have really focused on, the better part of a decade in my practice was legal compliance, regulatory compliance, and data privacy cybersecurity. And so, you mesh that up against being a mother of a young child and where we're headed as a country, and all of that comes together, and my real thing now is I have laser focus on parents' rights, and I think we should be the party of parents, and education for our children and their rights too, because they're evaporating before our eyes.
Yep. So that's a good segue, and we're heading into our lightning round, but don't fear. Let's spend as much time as we need to on this one. It's House Bill 1804, and it has to do with Couth, which, if you've not heard of Couth, it's a mobile application that might sound good. It sounds like it might address mental health issues, and of course we want mental health issues to be addressed. But what are some of the fears of Couth, Stephenie, and what would 1804 accomplish?
Yeah, so Couth, Kooth, I encourage everybody to look it up, and in fact I encourage you to do one step further, just so that you recognize that I am not just blowing smoke. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that anybody, including a sex offender, can get on there and speak with your child. I just want people to recognize that. I'm giving them a second to take that in. I am telling you, and despite what Couth says, because they've now come out and they said, oh, no, we don't do that. We have significant safeguards in place for the privacy of your children's information, for their health and well-being. We know who's talking to them. A few days ago, before we came to session, I grabbed my iPad, I went onto Couth's website, I made a fake name, a fake account, a right email address, a fake address, fake mailing address, fake birthday, and I got in there. And I could see threads. Basically, it's a chat room, a virtual chat room experience, under the guise of mental health treatment.
So if
And
you can do it, presumably someone who's
anyone
been
can,
convicted of
because
a
it
crime
wasn't
could
even
do it.
yeah, they had no idea. I made up some name like Fern, and I got in, and they're talking, it's kids, they're minors, and I'm not talking like 17-year-old minors. I'm talking 11 in Philly, 14 everywhere else, if they're telling the truth about their age, even getting into this system without parents' knowledge, without their consent, without their involvement, and they're having conversations about LGBTQ exploration, suicidal ideation. There were topics on there saying I'm addicted to porn. There are topics on there saying, I'm really struggling with not being ready to be sexually active with my boyfriend or my partner, whatever it was. But we need to, and we want to. And what do you think? And give me
these,
ideas.
Of course,
these are children, and it's all anonymous. And
Yep.
so that's their big claim to fame is you seek anonymous help. We're a safe place. We're a comfort. And all. You have children talking to absolute strangers. Best case scenario, they're talking to another child instead of their own family and their parents. But you have moderators in there, too, who are just Kuth-trained employees.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to be licensed
not
psychologists.
pastors, not counselors, not
Right.
parents.
They don't even need to be licensed, some of them. And fewer than 5% of users actually speak with a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist.
Yeah.
It's not telehealth.
Right. I know that I've had several constituents come to my office with concerns about Kuth. I think it's a bad idea. So it's House Bill 1804, and I am here with Stephenie Scialabba of Butler County, 12th Legislative District. Thanks for joining me, Stephenie.
Oh, happy to be here.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.